In MMA's early days, Mark Kerr was the most feared fighter bar none.
He looked like a superhero. Like, he didn't even look like a real person.
A big, friendly giant who turned into an animal once the bell rang.
Hey, Rock, we need you to play Mark Kerr. We need you to get him on more steroids.
I hear.
But his career is arguably the most tragic in MMA history. He went from a pioneer of the sport, one of its biggest stars, to a car salesman with periods of homelessness.
Are you sleeping in a car?
Sleeping in that car.
And there's one thing to blame: drugs.
It was a really fucked up time in my life. Because I was, fully addicted to opiates.
Kerr's addictions absolutely derailed his career, forced him to go to rehab, and literally almost killed him.
As your friend, you need help. And I was like, no, I don't need help. They're like, you need help.
It's a story of someone who was deemed invincible to the outside world, but on the inside, a tale of brutal addiction and a serious identity crisis. So this is the dark truth behind Mark Kerr. Unlike a lot of early MMA stars, Mark Kerr had a pretty up and down early life. Even before professional fighting was a possibility in his mind, the signs of his future struggles were apparent. As a wrestling prodigy in his youth, Kerr was arrested for being caught with stolen stereo equipment, but the more damaging knock-on effect was losing his scholarship at his university and being kicked out. After being lost in his personal life, Kerr found himself as a roadie for bands like the Rolling Stones and The Who.
I ended up working out at the state fairgrounds in Syracuse, New York, pulling cables for the bands that were coming in. Now the whole time as we were progressing and the bands getting bigger and bigger, the introduction to, narcotics, there's cocaine and, a bunch of different stuff around at the time. And I started experimenting a little bit then.
And as they grew to becoming worldwide megastars, he got caught up in the rock star lifestyle. Parties, drugs, and alcohol became a daily part of Kerr's life.
Taking cocaine for the first time is, the sense of euphoria and alertness. It almost feels like you have Spider-Man senses. Like I can hear an ant walk across, the floor from 30 feet away, and I can smell, I can smell you 2 blocks away.
But after finding his way back to wrestling, Mark Kerr was back on the straight and narrow, for now. He ended up winning an NCAA title, beating Randy Couture in the final, and narrowly missing out on representing the USA at the 1996 Olympics, losing to the future gold medalist Kurt Angle in the Olympic trials, someone he usually had the upper hand against.
In 93, he didn't win any match against me. 94, he didn't win any match. I won the freestyle nationals. I won the world team trials. 93, I won the world team trials. And just one of those things in 95, in nationals, freestyle nationals, we wrestled and he got bigger, stronger. and so he beat me. We tied during the match and they have passivity calls, stalling calls. And he beat me, and then he beat me in the world team trials. And then he wins the Olympic spot in 96, and then he wins the gold medal.
While Angle would go the pro wrestling route and ultimately struggle with painkiller addiction himself, Mark Kerr was introduced to a new violent, barbaric sport that he'd clearly excel in: mixed martial arts. His first introduction to MMA was down in Brazil at the World Vale Tudo Championships. That night, he beat 3 opponents back-to-back, with his powerful wrestling and vicious ground and pound earning him the nickname that still follows him to this day.
I think the name of the magazine was called Autonomy. It was a Brazilian fight magazine in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and on the cover of it, it says, Máquina de Bater, the machine that smashes. And it's a picture of me just mauling Fabio.
Then, it was the UFC's turn to get a taste of what Kerr could do. He won back-to-back tournaments, finishing 4 guys in just over 5 minutes total.
I was there when
I'm going to 285.
when Kerr fought Dan Bobbitt, and he stuck his chin in his eye. Stuck his chin in his eye socket and grabbed the back of his neck. And just
God. I'll tap.
Look, that's me interviewing him.
I was with you, Bubba.
Size that motherfucker.
I was with you that.
After dominating the UFC, Kerr turned his attention to Pride. The Japanese organization was arguably bigger and better than what the UFC was at the time.
The matches were huge. They did the Saitama Super Arena. It was 90,000 people. And that was when Kerr was in his prime.
And Mark Kerr was one of their new poster boys. Whether it was Japanese TV shows, radio shows, posters, Mark Kerr was front and center. And after continuing his dominance, Kerr was viewed as this invincible smashing machine that no one could touch. A multiple-time UFC tournament winner, undefeated in Pride, 4-time ADCC winner with unrivaled grappling.
Wrestling gives you the ability to hold somebody where they don't want to be held, right? For as long as you want to hold them there. And the third one is they can't do a thing about it.
But for those that knew him on the outside, he was beginning to have serious personal problems. Mark Coleman had been on record at the time to say Kerr was extremely anxious before fights. He feared losing and suffered with an emptiness afterwards. MMA in the late 90s, and particularly Pride, was far from the regulated world of wrestling that Kerr had known. As a result, he started taking anabolic steroids, much like the majority of MMA fighters during this era.
Anywhere in that contract did it say, like, they're going to test for performance enhancing drugs? No way.
No,
they probably encouraged it back then.
Not encourage it, but they here was their drug test. They would go, and I'm not kidding you. Here's what they would do. They'd hand you a cup, and they would go, you need pee. And you go, okay, I'll give it to you later. They're like, okay, you need pee. I go, okay. And I just kind of take it back. I go, okay, who's got
some pee for me?
here.
It meant Kerr could train like crazy, but it came with extra risks, most notably injuries. And to deal with the pain, Kerr turned to some serious painkillers.
My body wanted was it didn't want to feel pain. So eventually, it switched to where, I used narcotics, like Vicodin and stuff like that. Not taking enough Vicodin where I'm a zombie out there and just a punching bag. But through the years of competing, I have competed at less than I would consider my top level because of the narcotic use.
Before long, he was addicted, injecting strong liquid opioids into his body just to get through training sessions. Mark knew his substance abuse was a downward spiral, but he couldn't help himself.
You wake up from a bender, with this shame and guilt, and they call it an incomprehensible demoralization. Even at that moment, you're making all the promises in the world. I'm never going to do this again. I won't put myself through it. I won't put my family through it. I won't put my loved ones through it. And then a little bit goes by and you do it again. And then you end up in this loop. And, I was stuck in that loop for such a long time.
He was illegally paying off doctors to write him prescriptions, getting stronger painkillers imported in from Mexico, and was injecting them on a near daily basis. On the outside, everything was amazing, but behind the scenes, Kerr was seriously struggling.
There's doctors that had met that were junkies that wanted the meds just as bad as I did, that were willing to write scripts if I gave them half of the medication.
And it was during this time where Kerr's relationship with former Playboy model Dawn Staples began raising eyebrows. According to the 2002 documentary on Kerr, his then partner had her own struggles with partying and substance abuse, so together, the two enabled the behavior of one another. Allegedly, Kerr would be days out from a fight when Staples would come home intoxicated and the two would argue for hours. It's something you definitely don't need when you're stepping foot into the octagon or Pride ring. And the wild thing is, Mark's downfall with pain pills was all unintentionally caught on camera.
So what they were documenting was this guy from America, this insane wrestler, this gigantic man that they call the Smashing Machine, going over there and dominating. And they caught him right when it was all falling apart.
And then that's where the story changed, right?
Yes, and that's the documentary. And it is about pain pills. It's about pain medication. I think he was on a bunch of different things. But it was just dealing with the constant
He was
injuries.
the most talented individual I've ever stepped on the mat with.
Because while it eventually got turned into a no contest, Mark Kerr was beaten in a fistfight for the very first time, falling to a series of brutal knees from Igor Vovchanchin. Immediately, the air of invincibility vanished. Mark Kerr was no longer this unbeatable smashing machine. Instead, he was a fighter like anyone else. It was sadly the most critical moment in Kerr's career. His identity was shattered, and naturally, he turned to those substances he was abusing as a crutch. And just 1 month after the fight with Vovchanchin, Mark Kerr hit an all-time low. He had overdosed on narcotics and was rushed to the hospital with genuine fears for his life. After surviving the scare and heading back home, Kerr was determined to get himself clean. He checked himself into rehab for an entire month and came out with a new determination for his personal health. But his partner Dawn was struggling with her alcohol addiction at the same time, and that strain on the relationship ultimately caused it to end.
I think he had the wrong woman in his life, as I recall. That was a part of it.
I can't believe that.
All right? No, but
I think he's a pain guy.
Yeah.
I think he got hooked on pain pills.
Interesting, it'd be an interesting film.
After some time, Kerr started training with the recently retired Bas Rutten to help prepare him for the upcoming Grand Prix, featuring 16 of the scariest heavyweights on the planet. Kerr viewed this as his path to redemption. After blitzing through a tough opponent in the first round, Kerr was back to winning ways. But Mark's mental health struggles hadn't gone away. He still suffered with strong anxiety before fights and afterwards an empty depression.
After a fight week or after even a win, the crowd, everyone wants to it's such a fucking high after you win, and especially after you get your check, and then everyone's treating you a certain way, that there's a certain level like depression that comes after it that people don't talk about.
Yeah, nobody does.
Having to deal with that. How would you deal with it?
Oh man, it'd be nice to say that I stayed busy. You know, boredom for me, usually meant I was getting in trouble.
And it led him back to a relationship with Dawn, something Boss Rutan openly thought was a bad idea for his fighting career.
I want to sit down with you because I need to talk. I need to get in character for Dawn. So the conversation you had with her, and I go like, I said one thing to her one time. She goes, what? I said, get the hell out of this place right now. He says, it's the only thing I said. He goes, why would you do that? I go, because Mark just lost and he's completely down. And she walks in and she says, you look like a beginner. You look like a freaking loser. What were you doing out there? And I go, get the fuck out of here.
Perhaps Boss was onto something, because Mark Kerr lost in the next round against an opponent he should have walked through on paper. This was a big turning point in Kerr's career, and truthfully, it was the beginning of the end. Kerr returned with a victory, but then he suffered back-to-back defeats and took a break from MMA.
If you watch the tape, I knee that mother 4 times in the face, and I straight up, man, I mean, I knee, like skip knee, like where you bring your knee all the way back and like maximum impact. He staggers and then just keeps coming forward.
I think I remember that fight.
Oh my God, I literally in my head, and I'll never forget this, I literally in my head, and I don't do this when I'm fighting, I go, oh fuck.
But when he returned, Kerr physically looked like a shadow of his former self. While still strong and athletic, Mark was nothing like the specimen he was. And just 40 seconds in, while going for a pattern takedown, Kerr spiked his own head into the canvas and knocked himself out.
I shot in a double leg and picked him up in the air. When I picked him up in the air, I really wanted to drive his body down into the ground, because basically when you're in that position, you can stun an opponent. You pick him up, you stun him, and then you can change positions. I can actually come to a better advantage. And so when I picked him up, he locked on real tight with a guillotine. And when I picked him up and slammed him, it was my body weight, his body weight, straight onto my head. And it was a flash knockout.
But despite the loss, you could see just what a great, fun character Mark was to be around.
I love the thrill, I like the anxiety. There isn't anything else out there that really does this for me. Sure, I'd love to, make a run for the belt. And I think that it would be, whether I won the belt or lost the belt, I think at the end of the day, that I can actually hang up my wrestling shoes and say, okay, you know what? I gave it one final last push, did everything like I was supposed to do, and either won it or I didn't.
Because you don't want to end it with a freak.
No. I'll end up fighting you in the parking lot if that's the end of my career.
From there, he only competed in smaller and smaller shows against lesser and lesser opponents, sadly losing the vast majority of them. At one point, Kerr was 12-0, the star of the sport. Then all of a sudden, he had gone just 3 wins to 14 losses and drifted into retirement. After that, Mark Kerr disappeared from the limelight, and if it wasn't for his upcoming movie, a huge chunk of MMA fans would have no idea who he is, despite being in the Hall of Fame. Since being one of MMA's biggest stars, Mark hasn't lived a luxurious lifestyle. He's been a car salesman, dealt with disrespectful customers who don't know who he is, and built his own flooring company.
For me, I have regrets. Regret selling cars to feed my family is not one of them. Selling cars to be able to provide a nice home for my son to live in or a nice school to go to, that's not a regret. Obviously, do I think that my talents could be directed someplace else and I could be more beneficial? Yeah. I feel like sometimes doing anything other than wrestling or mixed martial arts or something around that, it feels like I'm a fish out of water.
For him, the toughest part is living a regular, mundane life when he has had such highs. Winning NCAA titles, ADCC gold medals, nearly missing out on the Olympics, winning UFC tournaments, or competing in front of 60,000 in Pride. From that to clocking in and out of a car dealership each day was a painful fall from grace. But having a story as wild as Mark Kerr's does come with some unusual benefits. With The Rock portraying him in the upcoming movie, it's giving the world a chance to learn about the incredible career of the Smashing Machine.
It still feels surreal in a lot of ways, but you know what, it feels validating. It's like one of those things, like history sometimes lost if you don't remember it, right? And that's one of those where through the whole entire process, my involvement, working with them, the authenticity that they really, really went after. I mean, I sent them copies of like rings that I wore back then.
No way.
Oh yeah, necklaces, clothing, pictures of all these different things, and they recreated a world 25 years ago.
It gets his name back in the limelight and hopefully presents a bunch of opportunities, money, and happiness to one of MMA's true pioneers. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, go smash the subscribe button, no pun intended, and we'll catch you on the next video.